As I stand here before you today, I have noticed that we are in the middle of an epidemic of monstrous proportions. Now, I'm not referring to the global pandemic that we're all currently going through, that current global health crisis necessarily, but in a lot of ways I actually see that as being sort of a symptom of this other epidemic that I'm referring to. As you go out about your lives in the world, how often do you see people who have completely disconnected from their spirit, who have just completely lost that sense of a greater self? And maybe I should put that just a slightly different way. How many people out there are you seeing who have lost that sense of who they are and where they come from, that greater sense of us being connected to everything? You know, that unifying force that we are all part of. Now, I've previously spoken about just how many changes there are going on in the world right now, and how for many of us those changes are happening much more quickly than we're really ready for. But it is at this time that we do need to understand exactly why people are feeling like they're caught flat-footed or feeling like things are shifting faster than they're ready for. And it's causing a lot of fear. We need to understand where this fear is coming from. And I have been asked by Spirit to give this sermon today, and I do confess it doesn't necessarily feel like my normal kind of a sermon, but as is always with my sermons, I just am the cell phone from Spirit that they dial into, so bear with me while we do this. We have, in so many ways, so many of us have become disconnected from that source of who we are. We've become disconnected from our own sense of spirit. We have, in so many ways, become disconnected from that. And now, how many of you understand what I mean when I say spirit? A few of you do. Cool. All right. Now, Reverend Stacy had spoken about the Spiritualist triune when she was here, but I do think it's a good time for a brief refresher. As a Spiritualist, we understand that we here, as we exist on this earthly sphere, that we are part of a greater whole. We are part of three connected parts to everything. We exist as part of this great consciousness, this triune of conscious energy. And it can best be described this way, I guess. We have a physical body that our consciousness inhabits while we are here on earth. We also have a soul that acts as sort of an intermediary between our physical body and our spirit part of us. And the spirit will talk to the soul, who then connects with our physical body. And our soul is our conscience. It kind of works through our subconscious mind to interact with our brain, helps us to understand how to interact out here in the physical world. Sorry, I'm laughing because I see a lot of faces of... Let me try and put this into more modern terminology for all of you. Think of our spirit as being kind of like a giant mainframe computer that is connected to the cloud. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with cloud computing nowadays, where all that information just kind of hangs out there virtually. Imagine your spirit as being part of the cloud, and your soul is the interface. Your soul is the software that runs the robot that is your physical body, if you think of it that way. The robot is who we are right now, here on earth. And our soul part of us, which a lot of people will also call your higher self, your higher consciousness, that part of us functions as really like I said, the intermediary, the software that helps to run the robot. But the ultimate commands are coming from way up here by your spirit. Now, most of us, especially in this physical world, we've kind of lost touch with the fact that we are more than just this physical body. We're much more than that. We are not just this physical existence. I think you understand what I mean, but if you look around at the people out there that you interact with every day, how many of us have gotten to the point where we forget that there's all this here because we're so busy going around trying to live day to day? This is where we really need to reconnect with our spirit. And what does this have to do with a global pandemic that I'm talking about, this big epidemic of disconnection? It has everything to do with it, actually, because, let me put it this way. How many of you have heard of Summerland? Okay, for those of you who are not aware of what Summerland is basically the next world that we go to, if we choose to, in which we can transition to when we leave our physical body. Summerland is beautiful. It's very much like Earth, except it's infinite love, infinite joy, infinite compassion. Everything is so much more beautiful there. And there is no decay, there is no pain. And it sounds amazing, right? It's like the perfect place for people to go after they leave here. Now, how do we find ourselves in such a place? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Well, that's a good start. Honestly, if you know how, you don't have to die to go visit there. We can literally soul travel there and check out our relatives, hang out there, learn things, and grow. But where I'm actually going with that is a good way to start knowing that you can make it to Summerland. One, know that you're worthy. But two, we actually recite them every day in church. These principles here are a great guideline. They are a great template to help you to remember your spirit, to help you to remember that you are worthy, to help live that good life so that you can find yourself in a wonderful place where it's just infinite love and compassion, and it's beautiful. Now, here's the rub, though. It is a matter of not just reading these. It's a matter of living these and living every day to be the best you that you can be. But that's also where, remember Spiritualist principle number 8? We may make some inappropriate choices in our lives, but Spiritualist principle number 8, every day is a new beginning. We always have the opportunity to have a fresh start. So as you're going about your day, remember to do what's right, not because you're expecting the thanks of a grateful nation, but because it's the right thing to do. If you live the principles and be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, you will have no problem finding yourself going to that place. The reason I bring it up that way is because, I'll word it this way, birds of a feather flock together. There are other spheres of existence that are here. If you want to call them dimensions, the Spiritualist Church likes to call them worlds or spheres. But if you want to think of them as dimensions, birds of a feather flock together. Negative people will tend to gravitate towards some of these lower energy dimensions. People who are more positive or who are at least trying to improve themselves will find themselves gravitating more to these places with the like-minded people. So that's why it's so important to try and be a better, stronger, happier person and to continue to grow. But now, to that epidemic that I was referring to, like I've said at the very beginning, I do not see it so much as an epidemic of a physical disease or even an epidemic of fear. I see it as an epidemic of disconnection. Ever since I was a small child, I have been brought by my spirit guides to Summerland to assist in what I have always seen as hospitals in spirit. And I know that that is symbolic, but I'm putting it into some terminology that we can easily relate to. But what I'm there to do in these hospitals is to help people who have recently physically passed and are now making their transition to spirit, but haven't necessarily understood what is going on because they got so disconnected from the idea that there's more than just this physical world. And so ever since I was a kid, part of what I was doing there was to help counsel these people while I was physically asleep. And over the years, as this has happened, I'm seeing more and more people who are running into this, and these symbolic hospitals are becoming more and more crowded with people who really don't understand what happened when they transitioned. And so that's part of why Spirit has asked me to give this sermon today, is to remind each of you that you are good, that you are capable of going there, and that there is so much more than us out there. And unfortunately, I know we're in a spiritualist church, so most of us have a much different view of death than a lot of people. But if you look at the general population, how many people out there have been taught to be afraid of death?
A lot.
Yeah, and even like the horror movies out there, they all talk, that's what they're all about. And they kind of make it seem like death is the end. It's not. It's the beginning of a new adventure. And so because all these people have been taught to fear death for whatever reason, not just because they're afraid of it being the great unknown, they don't know what to expect, but also because there's a lot of people out there who have been trained to expect judgment.
Yep.
And so that's where also in my personal experience and also the experience of so many other mediums out there, the only judgment that occurs when you make your transition is your judgment of yourself. Because it's really easy to make a judgment against yourself when you're surrounded by infinite love and compassion. And forget the fact that while you're down here making these choices, you are not surrounded by infinite love and compassion. And so when you get there, you might be a little hard on yourself as you review your life and say, I could have done that better. Oh, I could have done that better. But that's also where that infinite love and compassion helps you to learn and to grow. And there's nothing to fear. And so that's where, when you make your transition, just know that it's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful there. And so that's where I see so many people having been trained into that mindset of just not being sure what to expect. So they make their transition and they end up in a transitional area that I see as a symbolic hospital because they're lost. They don't feel like they deserve that joy. They don't feel like they deserve that love, that happiness. So they have to go through a lot of what I call afterlife therapy, where people in spirit, they need to understand that they are worthy of being loved in that way, that unconditional way. They also need to understand how to take responsibility for themselves in ways that they never did when they were here. And not everybody goes through this, but I see more and more people going through it as a way to help them adjust and help them to heal from this life. And that is where we really need to try and work with people who are still physically here to help them to reconnect with their spirit, reconnect with that part of themselves. We in the Spiritualist Church, and indeed in the world today actually, are kind of at a crossroads. People are feeling less connected with spirit than ever before, and we need to do something to help. So many people are feeling lost or weak or afraid, and they aren't really sure where to turn. If you think about it, so many of those old institutions that people used to rely on or used to believe in have failed them. And that's where spiritualism and its light of truth can be a beacon. It can help others. And I've noticed this a lot in the past with spiritualist churches. We all kind of have the mindset of, when a person is ready to find us, they'll find us. But unfortunately, that really hasn't been my experience in the past. I've seen a lot of people who have found our beautiful little chapel here through what I'll just term as outreach, through the idea of, hey, you know what? It sounds like you kind of need some help. Let me show you this. So what we kind of need to do is to help these people find their way to spiritualism. It's light of truth. It's empowering message. It's love. It's joy. We don't have to rely on someone else or somebody else to tell us we're an okay person. We don't have to have someone tell us that we are whole and that we are a beautiful soul and a spirit. We already know this. We are whole and perfect just as we are. It is a wonderfully empowering message that we need not be shy about sharing with the world. How can we reconnect and help ourselves reconnect with those hard parts? First, you'll love this. First, you connect by disconnecting. It's really easier than it sounds. What I am referring to is just taking a few minutes every day in the morning or in the evening and sit in silence. No television, no telephones, no music, no electronic devices of any kind. Just sit in stillness just for a few moments. Focus on relaxing, focusing on knowing that you are loved, knowing that there is a greater part of you that exists and that you are part of that great triune of energy, of love, of healing, of peace. And the next thing you can do, when you see someone who's struggling out there, you can reach out to them. If nothing else, provide them with an ear to listen or a shoulder to lean on. If you feel they could benefit, introduce them to spiritualism, introduce them to the principles. You can explain that the principles of spiritualism are a wonderful template that you can use to live a happy, productive life. And even if that person does not choose to take your advice or to really listen that much in that moment, you have planted a seed that will be growing into a beautiful spiritualist oak tree, or, hopefully a sunflower, in the future. Trust that each day you will be guided by your spirit. Not just your spirit guides, but your spirit part of you, that eternal, wise part of you. You will be guided each day to people, places, experiences, things that are going to help you out in a loving way to grow, to evolve. Live in the moment as much as you can. Know that you are doing your best and that the door to reformation is never closed. There is love, there is hope, there is joy that is yours for the taking. Live the life of spiritualist truth. Live a life of joy, a life of peace, a life of happiness, all while following the principles of spiritualism and living within accordance with nature's laws. And you will find yourself feeling that wonderful connection to your spirit again. Just know that it is yours for the taking. Thank you.